Well, I'll be damned, Jessie said again. Then once more for good measure. Oh. You know what? I'm going to let it ride. Well, I'll be damned, Jessie said again. Then once more for good measure. He could see the corner of the box just inside the Santa sack. He stuck his gun in his jacket pocket and pulled out the box. He grinned. It was a brand new Teen Tiger doll. Yes, Abigail dear, there is indeed a Santa. He examined the doll. A seductive pair of blue cat eyes surrounded by heavy eyeliner looked back at him from beneath an explosion of glittery hair. He was contemplating the appropriateness of the doll's pouty cherry red lips, tiger-striped miniskirt, and exposed midriff, when it struck him how very odd that the doll should be there in the first place. This being Santa's sack, he hoped there'd be the toys inside, sure, and he also hoped there'd be a Teen Tiger doll too, hadn't he? And which one had he been thinking of? He looked at the doll again. Tina Tiger, the one his daughter wanted. And there he was, sitting right on top, and there she was, sitting right on top, as though the sack were handing her to him. It's like the thing read my mind. The hair on his arms prickled, and he gave the bag a suspicious look. Okay, settle down. You're already weirded out enough. He took a deep breath. He lifted the sack, surprised at how light it was. He could hold it at arm's length with just one hand. It was about the size of one of those hefty lawn bags. He shook the snow off and carried it and the doll into his dining room, pulling the bedroom door shut behind him to keep the cold and snow out. Outside, the EMT had arrived. Bathing the room in flashing lights, Jessie tossed the bag on the floor, stared at it until he'd finished his cigarette, then pulled over a kitchen chair and sat down. He hooked a thumb into the lip of the sack and held it open, peering cautiously in, as though expecting something to spring out at him. The inside of the sack was dark, the black velvet lining quickly disappearing into shadows, allowing him to see no further than 3 or 4 inches within. There was something unnatural about those shadows, and the more he studied the dimness, the more convinced he became that he wasn't seeing shadows at all, but sort of smoke, a dense, swirling vapor. The smoke ebbed and flowed, yet it didn't leave the sack. He prodded the outside of the bag. It felt substantial, similar to the lumpy beanbag chair he'd had as a kid. He could push it this way and that, but it always regained its form. He really wanted to know what else was in there, but felt in no hurry to go sticking his arm into that smoky goo to find out. He peered back inside, thought about how delighted Abigail would be if he brought her not one, but maybe a couple of those little slutty dolls. He swallowed and eased his hand into the mouth of the bag. His fingers disappeared into the smoke, then his forearm. He noticed a change in temperature. The inside of the bag was much warmer, and all at once he had an overwhelming notion that the bag itself was alive, that he had his hand in the thing's mouth, and that the thing might chomp down on his arm like a bear trap. Something bumped his wrist and he cried out, yanking his hand from the bag. He examined his hand and arm like they might be covered in leeches, but they were fine. Damn it, stop being such a pussy. He thought of another one of the dolls, the Asian one with the dragon tattoo, bit his lip and slid his hand back in, pushed inward until his arm disappeared up to the elbow, praying his fingers would still be attached when he pulled them back out. He fished about until he found the object within. It felt like a box. He pulled it from the sack and wasn't the least bit surprised to find himself looking into Teen Tiger's exotic purple eyes. Jessie grunted. Okay, I get it. He thought of a goth one, then the redhead, retrieving both of them. He didn't stop there. Just the week before, Abigail had sat on his lap with the Toys R Us circular naming all 6 of the teen tigers and explained all their superpowers, had told him which ones she liked best and which accessories were must-haves. She went on to clarify just how hard it was for a girl her age to eat, sleep, or even breathe without having at least one of these awesome dolls in her possession. A minute later, Jessie had the full gang of tiger girls lined up across the table, as well as a tiger-striped red Corvette and 2 accessory blister packs. And it didn't take any great shakes to see that all of these toys couldn't have possibly fit in that bag together. The sacks making them somehow. Then it struck him. The bag is making whatever I wish for. His eyes grew wide, and he stopped breathing for a moment. Really? Had the heavens really just dropped a magic sack into his lap? He leapt to his feet, jumped over, and bolted the door, then peeked out the front window. The ambulance and patrol car were still there, but the neighbors had all gone home. Well, except for Phyllis, who was gabbing on a mile a minute to the EMT driver. Jesse pulled the shades shut and dropped down in front of the sack, his hand hovering over the opening. He closed his eyes, pictured a diamond ring, and slipped his hand in. There, he clasped a small velvet case, holding his breath as he slowly withdrew it from the bag. His fingers shook so bad it took 3 tries to pry it open. "Oh, fuck yeah," he said, holding the ring up to the light. His smile fell. It was a toy, nothing but plastic and painted aluminum. Dang it. He shook his head. Must have done something wrong. He tossed the ring over his shoulder, closed his eyes again, concentrating this time on a watch. He specifically thought about the gold Rolex he'd recently seen down at the pawn shop. The watch he pulled out did indeed say Rolex on his face, but it was still a toy. Oh, come on. 3 tin rings, 4 plastic watches, and a tall sack of play money later, he got the message. The sack only made toys. He slid back against the wall. Well, crap. He leaned his head against the paneling and stared up at the water stains on the ceiling. Shit never seems to want to go my way. All at once, everything that had happened this long, strange evening caught up with him, and he just wanted to crawl in bed and stay there. He glanced towards the bedroom, probably built a snowman in there by now. He sighed, plucked the seat cushion from the chair, propped it behind his head, and lay down right there on the floor. He watched the emergency lights flicking through the windows. His eyes wandered over the dolls. He managed to smile. I got every one of those little super tramps, every single one. He thought of Abigail's face, and his smile turned into a grin. For once, baby doll, your daddy's not going to be a loser. For once, your daddy's going to be a hero. He closed his eyes. Abigail, darling, just you hold on to your britches, because Santa Claus is coming to town.